Hello, I'm State Senator John Kavanagh, and this is another edition of Kavanagh's Corner, my video constituent report on the happenings at the Arizona State Senate, this one for the week of January 22nd. I had a pretty busy week, so let's talk about some of my bills that I've gotten out of committee. The first one is SB 1010, Personal Flotation Devices Rowing Exception. Personal flotation device is what a lawyer calls a life vest that people wear in boats. In Arizona, 16-year-old people and under have to wear one when they're in a boat. However, Brophy High School has a rowing team, a crew team, that is very successful and does competitive competitions. They can't wear life preservers when they practice or compete because it gets in the way of their performance. However, whenever they're practicing or competing, they have trained adults in a motorized boat right next to them, and the boat is full of life-saving equipment and everybody's qualified as swimmers. So there's really no need to make them wear the life preservers. So my bill simply makes an exception for competitive school rowing teams when they have proper safety supervision. The next bill is SB 1012, Inspections of Sober Living Homes. Sober living homes are somewhat problematic. These are group homes that people who are recovering from addiction live in, often nearby to the centers and hospitals where they're receiving the actual treatment to get off drugs or alcohol. Some of them are poorly run. They can sometimes disrupt the communities. But local governments are pretty much prevented from doing any supervision. The state health department is supposed to inspect them, but there are only 3 inspectors for the entire state. My bill would allow local government fire safety and building inspectors to do inspections for local zoning and fire safety. The zoning to make sure that they're not over-occupied, and the fire safety to make sure that the people are safe there. Right now, law says they can't do that. The next one is SB 1036, Setting Aside Conviction Certificate of Eligibility. Last year, we passed a bill that allows a person, if they meet certain qualifications, to have their conviction for felonies and misdemeanors set aside by a judge so that they more or less had a clean record. Of course, the information would still be available for enhanced sentencing should they commit more crimes, or possibly for licensures for certain occupations. But for the public, they would not have the criminal record, which would be an anchor around them getting jobs and getting other education. However, the bill made a mistake. The bill said that they could get an unlimited number of felonies set aside, but only 1 misdemeanor. It was supposed to be the reverse, only 1 felony and a limited number, unlimited misdemeanors. So we're going to change that error. The next one is SB 1038, which sets up a probate advisory committee. Probate is when the court moves in to deal with the finances and other life arrangements of a person who's unable to make those decisions for themselves. These are often minor children whose parents are gone, or perhaps older people that are suffering some mental handicap. It's complicated. It usually works fine, but sometimes there are abuses. People try to take advantage of them. So what my bill does is set up an advisory committee composed of people from the courts, from attorneys, from victims' rights groups, to sit down and perhaps to refine and improve our probate laws. And they'll just make recommendations for future discipline. SB 1044 is one of those bills where I read something in the newspaper and I said, that's ridiculous. In the case of this bill, I read that some of our K-12 schools were giving out-of-school suspensions to students who were truant, not showing up in school. Now, it doesn't really make too much sense to punish a student who's not coming to school by legally allowing that same student to not come to school, which is what an out-of-school suspension is. So my bill simply requires that if it's truancy, the students have to be in school. They can be isolated from the other students, but they have to have some sort of academic training. The next one is SB 1058 and deals with the polygraph, or the lie detector. Now, last year we passed a bill which prohibited police departments from using the polygraph in internal discipline investigations of police officers. The polygraph, of course, is already illegal to use anywhere in the private sector. It's also illegal to be used in courts unless somebody agrees to have the results put in there. And the reason why it's generally banned everywhere is because the polygraph is junk science. The polygraph is an instrument which measures certain body functions, like how fast you breathe, how deep you breathe, your blood pressure. A sensor is on your finger and measures perspiration to see, by putting electricity through your finger to see how much goes through. The idea is, if you're lying, you become nervous and anxious. And as a result, your breathing rate and depth goes up, your blood pressure goes up, you start to sweat, and that sensor picks that up. So basically, a lie detector doesn't detect lies. A lie detector detects nervousness on the part of the people who is being given the test. And then we rely on a person, an operator, to interpret whether or not that nervousness, when they answer questions, is indicative of a lie. It is junk science. It is subjective. There is no proof behind it. All sorts of renowned institutions have called it worthless. Yet our police departments are still allowed to use it for recruit hiring and volunteer acceptance. This bill will get rid of that. It has no place in any government entity or anywhere for that matter. The next bill is SB 1060, and this deals with the definition of an animal owner. Unfortunately, over the last year, the Maricopa County Dog Pound has been in turmoil. They had a new boss who alienated all of the volunteers, and it was being run quite poorly. And as a result, a lot of the Humane Society volunteers who were helping there as volunteers came to me and they asked for some changes. I had a number of meetings with them, and from that, a number of bills are evolving. This is one of those bills. We discovered that the Maricopa Dog Pound was asking humane animal volunteers to occasionally take animals that there was no room for in this county shelter and put them in their homes, which they were doing at no cost. However, in Arizona law, after you have an animal for 6 days, the animal becomes yours. So after 6 days, these people would say to the shelter, hey, I can't keep the animal for you anymore. I'd like to drop the animal off. And the shelter was saying, no, you can't. The animal is now yours legally. I mean, that was not the intent of the law. And the county pound asked these people to do that. So this law simply clarifies that the 6 days that makes the animal yours, where you can't turn him in as a stray, doesn't apply to any time periods where the pound asked you to hold the animal for them. It's kind of common sense. The budget is kind of rolling along. As the Appropriations Committee Chair and as part of the Senate Leadership Group, we've been speaking with the House, and we believe we'll be rolling forward what we call a continuation budget, which is basically all the funding that we now require to run the government, plus some increases for inflation or maybe more students in schools. We want to pass that right away, because if we can't do the complete budget, which allocates an additional $1.5 billion roughly of new revenue, if we can't settle that by June, and we appear to have big differences with the governor, then government shuts down. And we don't want that to happen. So we want to pass this continuing budget now, so everybody who relies on state money, employees for their salaries, people who rely on state benefits, businesses that do business with the government and want to be paid, so they all know that the money will be there. We pass that, everything is secure, then we can negotiate in good faith with the governor on the remaining dollars that we have to spend, be it for tax cuts or new programs or paying off debt or whatever. So that's it for this week's edition of Kavanagh's Corner. It's interesting, exciting at the legislature, and there's a lot more to come. So stay tuned for the next edition of Kavanagh's Corner, and I am State Senator John Kavanagh. Thanks for watching.